They thought they had you figured out. That no matter how much they pulled away, no matter how many times they discarded you like an afterthought, you would always return. They mistook your patience for weakness, your loyalty for dependence. They believed that if they created distance, it would leave you desperate, grasping, chasing. But what they never realized was that you were never chasing them. You were chasing clarity. And once you found it, they became irrelevant. The brain is wired to seek closure. That's the trick, isn't it? That's why so many people spend their lives tangled in unfinished business, returning to places they should have left behind. But what happens when you refuse to play along? When you walk away without giving them the satisfaction of an ending? It drives them mad. Because the only thing more haunting than rejection is indifference. They expected drama, but you gave them silence. And that is something they will never forgive. People expect reactions because reactions confirm influence. It's a game of control, of emotional puppeteering. They wanted to see the anger in your eyes, hear the frustration in your voice, watch you unravel. They wanted proof that their absence wounded you. But when they looked back, expecting to see you scrambling to fix things, chasing after them like a lost soul, you were already gone. No hesitation, no parting words, just absence. And that absence, it burned deeper than any insult, any fight, any pleading ever could. This is what they fail to understand. True detachment isn't about physical distance. It's about removing their ability to affect you in any capacity. The real victory is not walking away. It's walking away without a second thought. They spent so much time convincing themselves that you needed them, that your world revolved around their validation. But now, they are the ones questioning their own worth. Because if you could let go so easily, maybe they were never that important to begin with. Silence and distance are the loudest responses to those who expected your desperation. People think power is about speaking louder, fighting harder, proving something. But power is knowing you don't have to prove anything at all. They lost access to you. That is the consequence. No argument, no explanation, no grand farewell. Just the realization that you will never be that accessible again. You never had to chase. The ones who try to control others always believe that their presence is a gift, that leaving will be punishment enough. But what happens when you do not react the way they predicted? When the person they expected to be lost without them flourishes in their absence? That is when the regret sets in. That is when they start watching from a distance, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who lost something. You see, people want what they can't have. The moment you stop seeking them, the moment your energy is redirected towards yourself, they feel the void. Because now you are an unanswered question in their mind, and people hate unanswered questions. The brain is restless when a story has no conclusion, when there is no grand moment of reconciliation or resolution. And so, they obsess, they analyze, they wonder. And you? You move forward. They expected a reaction. They counted on it. In their mind, they were the ones with the power, the ones controlling the narrative. They thought they could play with your emotions, push you to the edge, then pull you back when it suited them. That was the game, to create chaos and watch you scramble for clarity, to keep you stuck in their endless cycle of confusion. But you didn't play along. You didn't chase. You disappeared. And now they're the ones haunted by the silence. The human brain is addicted to closure. It craves resolution, a final scene, an explanation that ties everything together. But you gave them nothing. No desperate texts, no long-winded confrontations, no attempt to salvage what was already broken. And that shattered them. Because when a toxic person loses access to your energy, they don't just lose control, they lose their entire sense of significance. They built their power on your reactions, on your attempts to understand, on your need for closure. Now, left alone with nothing but their own thoughts, they spiral. They search for signs that you still care. They drop bait, waiting for you to bite. They tell themselves that your silence is temporary, that you'll eventually return looking for answers. But you won't. You never needed answers. You needed freedom. And in walking away without a second glance, you denied them the one thing they never expected to lose: your attention. People like them don't know how to function without an audience. Toxicity thrives on engagement. Without your responses, without your pain to feed on, they wither. They replay the last conversation, dissect your final words, invent justifications for your absence. But deep down, beneath the excuses and the lies, they know the truth. They pushed too far. They played their games too long. And now, they are left to wrestle with the very thing they tried to force onto you: uncertainty. They try to rewrite the past, twisting the story in their favor, convincing themselves that you were the weak one, the broken one, the one who couldn't handle them. But if that were true, then why are they still thinking about you? Why does the absence of your presence feel heavier than anything they expected? Why are they the ones struggling to move on? That's the thing about closure. It isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you take for yourself. And you took it the moment you walked away. No explanations, no justifications, just a decision. A decision to stop giving them power over your emotions, to stop playing their game, to stop seeking validation from someone who never deserved it. They needed proof. Proof that their words still held weight, that their absence left a wound, that their games still kept you tangled in invisible chains. They wanted to see the pain in your eyes, hear the anger in your voice, watch you react in a way that fed their ego. Because reactions are currency in the world of manipulation. And when you didn't give them what they expected, their entire strategy collapsed. They pushed your buttons, hoping for an explosion. They created conflict, expecting you to fight for their approval. They crafted situations designed to provoke you, knowing that as long as you reacted, they were still in control. That's how people like them operate. Through manipulation, through emotional puppeteering, through the quiet satisfaction of knowing they can dictate how you feel. But when you stopped reacting, when you severed the connection between their actions and your emotions, they lost everything. Reactions validate power. The more you respond, the more they believe they matter. Whether it's love or hate, pleading or rage, as long as your energy is directed at them, they remain significant. That's why they don't care if you love them or resent them, as long as you still engage. Indifference, however, indifference is the death of their influence, and that's exactly what you gave them. They waited for the breakdown, the confrontation, the emotional outburst. But it never came. Instead, you gave them silence. No explanations, no fights, no attempts to clear the air. Just the realization that their presence no longer dictated your emotional state. And that terrified them. Because nothing shakes a manipulator more than realizing they no longer have control over someone they once played like a puppet. People like them aren't equipped to handle disconnection. They thrive in drama, in emotional chaos, in the back and forth of psychological warfare. But when you refuse to engage, when you remove yourself from the cycle, they are left with nothing but themselves. And that is their greatest nightmare. Because without someone to manipulate, they have to confront their own emptiness. They will test you. They will try to reignite the cycle. A casual message, an indirect insult, a fabricated crisis designed to pull you back in. But when you've mastered emotional discipline, you see through it all. You recognize the pattern, the desperation behind their actions. And instead of reacting, instead of falling into the trap, you do the one thing they never anticipated. You move on. Not in a dramatic way, not in an effort to prove anything, but in the way that wounds the deepest. With silence, with presence, with growth, with the undeniable reality that they no longer matter. They expected you to be predictable, to be the same version of yourself that once clung to their approval. But you aren't that person anymore. You've outgrown them. And that truth will haunt them far more than any reaction ever could. They thought that if you left, it would only be temporary, that you would carry the weight of them in your mind, that even in your silence, you would still be theirs. Because that's what people like them count on. Not distance, but emotional chains. They don't need to be in your life to control you. As long as they still linger in your thoughts, as long as their words still dictate your emotions, they win. That's the illusion of detachment. Most people move on physically, but remain prisoners mentally. They take the body, but leave the mind behind. They walk away, but still check their phone, still wait for validation, still let the past whisper in their ear. And that's exactly what toxic people count on. They don't care if you're gone as long as they still live in your head. But real detachment is when you strip them of that power completely. Detachment is not about ignoring them. It's about making them irrelevant. It's about getting to a point where their existence no longer affects your internal world, where their absence doesn't feel like a wound, where their words no longer hold weight, where their actions no longer shape your reality. It is the moment you stop checking, stop wondering, stop needing to know. It is not silence for the sake of pride. It is silence because they are no longer a part of your story. They expect you to heal with resentment, to move forward with anger still burning beneath the surface, because as long as you hate them, you are still connected to them. But when you reach true detachment, when you no longer carry even the bitterness of the past, that is when they lose. That is when they become ghosts in your world, present but powerless. People like them thrive on emotional dependency. They expect you to react, to seek closure, to prove that you still care in some way, even if it's through hatred, through pain, through frustration. As long as your emotions are tied to them, they remain significant. That's why they reach out when they sense you slipping away. A casual message, an indirect jab, a desperate attempt to stir something inside you. But you do not respond. Not because you're holding back, but because you feel nothing at all. That's what terrifies them. The realization that they could set the world on fire and you wouldn't even notice. That the person they once had so much control over has become untouchable. That they are no longer a factor in your reality. This is where most people fail. They cut people off, but let them live in their heads. They leave relationships, but still search for meaning in the wreckage. They move forward physically, but remain stuck emotionally. Detachment is not just about walking away. It's about closing the door in your mind and never opening it again. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need closure. You don't need them to acknowledge what they did. Because once you reach true detachment, you no longer care whether they understand or not. Their existence no longer influences your thoughts, your emotions, your direction. And that is the deepest kind of freedom. They expected tears. They expected rage. They expected you to crumble under the weight of their absence, to reach out, to beg, to prove that their presence in your life still mattered. They thought they had left a wound so deep that you would never recover. But instead, they were met with silence. No explanations, no confrontations, no desperate attempts to make sense of it all. Just distance. And that was something they never anticipated. Silence is a language of its own. It speaks louder than any argument, any closure-seeking conversation, any final words uttered in anger. Silence leaves a void, one that people like them cannot stand. Because where there is silence, there is no validation, no proof that they left an impact, no reassurance that they mattered. And that realization, that is what haunts them. People like them thrive on control, on knowing that they can walk in and out of your life and still leave an echo behind. As long as you react, as long as you give them something, anything to hold on to, they feel important. But when you give them nothing, that is when the panic sets in. They wait. They test. They throw bait into the water, hoping you'll bite. A casual message, a reminder of shared memories, a calculated attempt to reopen the wound. But you remain silent, not out of stubbornness, not out of spite, but because you no longer have anything to say. You do not respond, not because you are waiting for the right moment, but because you no longer care. Distance does something strange to the mind. It distorts, it amplifies, it forces reflection. They start to question, was leaving you behind a mistake? Were you really as replaceable as they once believed? Were they the ones in control, or were they simply pushing away something they didn't understand? Because silence isn't just absence. It is a mirror. It forces them to sit alone with the consequences of their actions, with no external noise to drown out their thoughts. It forces them to acknowledge the role they played in their own downfall. And the worst part? They can't fix what they can't access. That is why distance is the ultimate revenge. Not because it punishes them, but because it removes you from the equation entirely. They expected to be the center of your world. Now, they don't even exist in it. People assume that moving on means finding someone new, proving yourself, showing them what they lost. But true moving on is when you stop thinking about them altogether. It's when their name holds no weight, their actions no longer define your emotions. Their absence feels like peace rather than pain. They wanted you to beg, to prove your worth, to chase them down the road they walked away on. They wanted to see your hands stretched out, grasping for their validation, your voice trembling with desperation, your soul shrinking under the weight of their absence. They wanted to feel irreplaceable, but instead, you chose yourself. You chose to rise, to evolve, to become something so untouchable, so magnetic, that now, they are the ones looking back. The world has a way of pulling people toward those who refuse to chase. Desperation repels, but certainty attracts. People don't want what's freely handed to them. They want what they believe is beyond their reach. And the moment you stopped proving, stopped pleading, stopped placing your value in their hands, you became the very thing they once took for granted, unattainable. You see, those who walk away expecting you to follow never expect to turn around and find you thriving. They anticipate your loss, your regret, your desperate attempts to remind them of your worth. They do not expect silence. They do not expect distance. And they certainly do not expect you to flourish without them. That is where the power shift happens. When you stop chasing, when you focus on your own path, when you invest in yourself instead of trying to convince someone else to see your value, you become something rare. And rare things? People chase them. Look around. Look at the ones who once overlooked you, the ones who dismissed your worth, the ones who thought they could walk away without consequence. Now, they hesitate. Now, they watch. Now, they wonder if maybe, just maybe, they made a mistake. Because the moment they realized you would never chase them, you became someone they could never replace. Never chase people. Be the kind of person people chase. The kind of person who doesn't need validation, who doesn't waste energy on those who walked away, who doesn't lower their value just to fit into someone else's expectations. The kind of person who moves forward with quiet confidence, knowing that the right people will recognize their worth without needing to be convinced. There's a lesson in this. The ones meant for you will never need to be pursued. They will gravitate toward you naturally, drawn not by neediness, but by presence, by the sheer force of the person you have become. Most people think power is about action, about fighting back, about making their voice heard. But the real power? It's in doing nothing at all. Silence is a weapon sharper than any argument, stronger than any confrontation. It forces them to sit alone with their own actions, their own words, their own regret. Because without your energy, without your reaction, they lose control. Awareness is everything. The moment you raise it, the moment you step back and observe how things truly work, you realize that chasing is an illusion, that most people thrive on attention, that their sense of worth is tied to how much space they occupy in your mind. And when you withdraw that space, when you remove yourself from the equation, their power crumbles. The universe operates on energy. What you feed grows. What you give your attention to expands. They hoped you would waste your energy on them, that you would keep fueling the fire they created. But instead, you let it burn out on its own. And that is why you are free. Nothing is more unsettling than indifference. They expected resistance. They expected a fight. They never expected to become irrelevant. People who manipulate, who play games, who seek validation through chaos. They do not know how to handle being ignored. It disrupts the entire foundation of their power. Because if you don't care, then they don't matter. Most people don't understand this. They waste years explaining themselves, fighting for closure, proving their worth to those who never deserved it. But awareness teaches you something different. It shows you that not doing anything is not weakness. It is the highest form of control. It is the realization that your energy is yours to protect, that your peace is worth more than any petty battle. That's why you never look back. Because the moment you saw through the illusion, the moment you recognized that their power relied on your participation, you became untouchable. You stopped feeding what was meant to starve. You stopped keeping doors open that were meant to stay closed. And in doing so, you reclaimed every piece of yourself they once thought they could control. Now, they are the ones struggling to move on. Not because they lost you, but because they lost their grip on you. They pushed you away, expecting you to fight for a place in their world. But instead, you built your own. Let them. Let them wonder. Let them regret. Let them sit with the consequences of their own choices. Because you are too busy moving forward to even notice.